So what I'm going to talk to you today about is how do we take all these things that I've shown you, and everything, hopefully, because you've read all the chapters, right? Read them thoroughly all the way through, made notes and all that kind of stuff. Totally changed your whole business, right? We all hope, right? But when I say we, coaches like myself and teachers, we get that adrenaline rush, right? Or that, I don't know, just the dopamine, I guess, would be the best way to put it, of when we feel like what we have to offer, helps and you gain from it. So this is kind of how do we put this all together into a routine that will allow you to know what to do and how much time to spend doing it to get that extra business that you want, so you don't feel like you're all over the place. And how many of you kind of feel that way? You go to a lot of these courses and classes and coaching and CE training and things like that, and it feels like you're at a Hawaiian haystack. You've been to a Hawaiian, buffet where you just keep piling the food on top of the plate, and then by the time you're at the end of the buffet, it looks like a big tower. They call it the haystack. Sometimes it feels like in our business we do the same thing. We get so many great ideas out there, and we just keep piling up and piling up and piling up. And before you know it, even after being in the business only for a year or so, you feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all this? How am I going to manage all this stuff that I'm supposed to be doing for my business in order to help my clients and grow my business and all that kind of stuff? And the fact that you're wearing the same hat, or all the hats, I should say, for all of your business, your accounting hat, your service delivery hat, your marketing hat, all those things are kind of being done by you. It gets to be overwhelming. How many of you feel a little overwhelmed sometimes in your business? Yeah, so the combination of feeling overwhelmed combined with how many of you wake up every morning and think, okay, what the heck am I supposed to do today to get that next piece of business, right? And you're really trying your hardest and working very hard to get that, but it doesn't feel sometimes as structured or as, it doesn't feel as much as like I wake up, I know exactly what I do, where I go, and how I get the next piece of business. We're kind of just all over the place. Anybody feel like that? I feel like that myself, so don't worry. Everybody feels like that to some degree. So let's go through time blocking and goal setting. I'm going to jump between the two chapters, the last two chapters. So please forgive me if you're trying to follow through there, because I want to make sure that you kind of capture the whole picture of what I'm talking about. But you're going to have to do your own due diligence. Now, for those that want to join us for the coaching group, we'll help you put this all together. That's the whole purpose of it. It is tough to try to put it all together and then to hold yourself accountable to it. So I'll talk to you about that a little bit as we go into this class. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, which is actually part of the last chapter, is the best way for you to set up a powerful day of intention and strategy is to start your morning as best as you possibly can. So just for a few minutes, I want to talk about the morning routine. How many of you have a morning routine? Good. Did you know that every single hand should be up because you all have one, right? Some of you are very intentional about it. Those are probably the hands that went up. The rest of you probably just kind of do the same things over and over again because we're pretty much creatures of habit. You ever notice that? We like to do the same things over and over again, even though we keep telling ourselves that we're going to change and grow and, we set our goals and all that, and then we kind of end up doing the same things that we've always done because we feel comfortable with those things, and that's fine. I will tell you, though, that if you really want to make a significant change in your business and in your life, it starts in the morning. It really does. Now, for me, I also have a bedtime routine. We won't go into that part of it, because you can we don't have time. But in the morning, I want to make sure that I have enough rest, so that I can wake up early enough that I can do my morning routine. Now, how early do you need to wake up to do your morning routine? If you ask Hal Enrod, have you ever heard of his book, The Miracle Morning? He wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You heard some of those. There's no way I'm ever going to me, 4 o'clock is not morning. It's still night. And I'm still sleeping. So there's no way I'm going to wake up every morning at 4 o'clock and feel like this is a healthy way for me to get going. For other people that are morning people, great. And we all have, I don't know if you've heard, but we have our own internal clocks, and some of us are more night owls, and some of us are more morning people, so you can try to figure that out. But what I will say is that if you can carve out 1 hour in the morning to create a routine that you can't, that nothing else is going to disturb that hour. Nothing else is going to get in the way of what you can do for yourself to kind of re-energize yourself and get prepared for the day for just 1 hour. mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Those are the four ways that you want to recharge yourself. Now, when I say spiritually, by the way, I don't mean necessarily it has to be religious spiritually. So it's kind of that metaphysical side of things that go kind of beyond just what's present to you. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So hopefully you have that in the book. There's a whole chapter on it, and in the tracker, which I'll show you in a minute, which is part of the coaching piece of it, there's just a one-pager. But you really should have just 1 hour that you try to get things going. It should start usually with a good workout. I don't know if you do a workout in the morning. Yeah, you're like, yeah, I should do a workout. Some of us overdo it, and I mean, it's up to you. When I was younger, I overdid it. I went to a CrossFit gym, and that was great for me at the time. I'm well into my 50s now, and I don't have time for that. And I have 1 hour that I can dedicate to it. Some of you have kids and other obligations that you have to, kind of figure out, because you have to have that 1 hour to yourself if you're really going to make it your own hour and really have it be purposeful before all the other demands of the day hit you. So I've actually joined, it happened during COVID, and it's the worst name of a website ever, because I don't want it to feel like, I'm trying to get a beach body, but it's called beachbody.com. And I use that because they do all these different workouts. They have like 20 or 30 different trainers and coaches. I really, not just because I do coaching, I really believe in the power of coaching. When I have someone telling me that's really good at what they do, what I should be doing, and they're there kind of holding me to that, it's a great way to get things going and get it done fast and efficiently. So it's a 30-minute workout I do in the morning. Now I'll do a little bit of a stretch before and after, so it might take 40 minutes or so, but it's a great way to do a quick workout. So figure out what yours is, whether you like to do a run or you have some other machine in your house or something like that, that's great. But you should get your blood pumping in the morning, because you need that. You've been laying flat all night long, and when you get up, you really need to get that blood moving through your body. And do you know which organ in your body needs the most blood, and it's probably the most important for what we're talking about?
Brain.
Your brain does, right? So you need to get that blood going back up there, and if you want to have great ideas and want to be innovative and really kind of use your head to be able to get things done, get that blood going, right? Waking up and drinking a Red Bull or coffee first thing and looking at your phone probably is not the best way you've heard, to start your day. And it's hard not to do stuff like that. We want the energy right away. We reach for stuff like that. How many of you put your phone right next to your bed where it's charging, and the first thing you do in the morning and the last thing you do at night is get to that phone? And then you're kind of ingrained in what needs to get done and kind of this task mode instead of really trying to get ready for the day. Okay, so starting that workout. After my workout, I take a shower, obviously, because hopefully I did a really good workout. The reason I like the Beachbody workouts is because I can spend 7 to 10 or 12 weeks on one workout, and then I go to another, and then another. They have the HIIT and the plyo and the cardio. They have all different kinds of things, weightlifting and things like that, and it's been easy for me to follow. So find something that you feel comfortable with, but you should really have a good workout every 30 minutes every morning as soon as you wake up. There's a really good book written by what's his name? It's called Make Your Bed. Probably heard of that book before. Really good. One of the things I learned from that book, what was that? McRaven, thank you, is that I make my bed each morning. My wife loves me for it. I didn't realize that was the side effect of making my bed every morning. My wife's like, whoa, you're actually a cool guy now. But it's a good thing because I don't get back into bed, and it's an accomplishment. It's a good thing. It's become now a routine. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is routines. Routines are so much more powerful than doing great things every now and then. I don't know if you know that or if you've learned that, and you probably have. But if you can do a small thing each day that's a good thing, and you do it day in and day out, it's so much more powerful than doing a great thing every now and then, right? And it can lead to those great things. Like if you want to run a marathon, what's the best way to run a marathon? Run a few miles a day, every day for a long time and kind of scale up on that. And then all of a sudden, running 26 miles isn't that big of a deal. But at first you think, how does anybody run 26 miles? At least I remember thinking that too. So do the little things each day that are going to lead you to the big things that you want to accomplish. But don't put the focus on just doing those big things, because then we forget all the important little things along the way. Does that make sense? So I go and take a shower. I actually do a meditation in the shower. I know that sounds kind of weird. I don't want to sound weird or anything like that, but mindfulness is really important. I try to feel every drop that hits my head or my body or something like that. It's something where you become very almost hypersensitive to your your surroundings, to your senses, the five senses that you have. Mindfulness is a great way to, and I wish I had more time to talk about it, but your frontal lobes that we've all, developed as human beings, compared to the stem in the back of our brain that tells us to flight, and the fear and the anxiety and this what we're scared of kind of hits us a lot of times. How many of you each day have a little bit of anxiety hitting you and fear and what's going to happen next? And we kind of run a lot away from things instead of to things, and we kind of get into these mindsets of what's wrong instead of what's good and what's right. How do we take the next best step forward? So mindfulness is a big part of that. So I use a little bit of mindfulness in the shower, and then at the very end of my shower, you're all going to hate when I say this because I always get the moans when I say it, but I turn the water as cold as I can for at least 30 seconds at the very end of my shower. Now I say as cold as you can. Like, it's kind of crazy. The first time I did it, it wasn't that cold, right? And then if it's a very cold day, sometimes it doesn't seem to get that cold. But every day, if you do this at the very end of your shower and you go a little bit colder, before you know it, I can turn it all the way on cold water and I can stand that, right? Now, what does cold water do for your body? Anyone know? You heard of the vagus nerve? You should look it up if you haven't. It's amazing what kind of... There's all these great things about your body that you should be aware of in terms of staying healthy and things that you should be aware of that will help you to, kind of re-energize yourself in those 4 areas that I mentioned before. So take advantage of that. Simple little things you can do each day make a huge difference over time. Huge difference compared to big things that you might do. You don't have to go to some cave retreat or, do something, significant in terms of trying to help yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The little things you do each day are so much more powerful, as I said before, than some big event that you're going to try to do. And those big events will actually happen because of those little things that you do each day. Notice how I repeated that now twice. Probably say it one more time, because repetition is important to understand how significant these things are. And it took me a while to learn them. I wish I'd have learned them when I was much younger. Okay. After I take a shower and I'm getting ready, I have in my closet hanging up my goal sheet. It's a 1-page goal sheet. If you become part of our coaching program, I'll teach you how to do that. I can't emphasize how... I don't even know how people do things that they want to do without this kind of effort. So I have just a 1-page goal sheet. It has my measurable goals at the top, just 4 or 5. I don't have to put 100 things in there. There's just 3 or 4, maybe 5 things that I want to do this year, these next 12 months, that I can measure against. For business, what should some of those goals be? How much volume you do, or your commission that you're going to make. It should be something measurable that you're going against. I'd like to divide that number by the average commission and the house price, out there, so that I can put it down by sides. How many sides do I want to get? Listing versus buying. And then if I've taught you well enough, you know that you should put most of your emphasis where? On which side of the business? On the listing side of the business, because you'll get plenty of buyers there. So if you're not doing as many listings, which most agents aren't, like if you need to do 30, sides this next year to get the volume that you want, or the commission, gross commission that you want, then you should say, well, how many of those should be listings compared to buyings? And you should push yourself a little bit more on the listing side. And the funny thing is, if you do that, even though it's just in a goal sheet and you start to create routines that we'll talk about to create that, all of a sudden your buyers will just continually increase as well, because when people sell, what do they also need to do? They need to buy. And when you get referrals, it'll come through that too. And you'll just have all these great ideas because of your morning routine of how to get this new business, and hopefully things that I'll teach you today. So I read it every day. Why do I read it every day? The goal sheet?
Remember it.
Not only do I remember it, it becomes part of who I am. It's a weird thing. That's what makes it kind of metaphysical in that sense, is that whether you call it serendipity or divine intervention or whatever you want to call it, when you set your mind to what you want to do and you remind yourself of it every day, things just seem to happen, even things that are out of your control. You ask some of the most successful people out there, number 1, they have a morning routine. Number 2, they do goals and they remind themselves of those goals. And number 3, guess what they attribute most of their successes to? Luck. They literally attribute it to luck. You can talk to some of the most successful people out there, wealthy and everything, unless they've got a huge ego and they haven't overcome the ego yet. For the most part, they will admit, I don't know how all this happened as well as it did. It just did. Well, it's all the little things they did each day that resulted in those big accomplishments. But a lot of times it's doors that open when you just basically keep telling yourself, this is where I want to go and this is what I want to accomplish. And they just happen. I can't tell you how many times something I needed, a person or an opportunity came my way that I didn't actually push for. It wasn't my goal for that necessarily, that particular opportunity that showed or that came to me. But it was because of those little things that I did and the reminders that I made to myself of what I wanted to accomplish that made that actually happen. Does that make sense? Right? It works really well. Oh, by the way, I didn't mean to stop talking about those three components of the goal sheet. You have your measurable goals, then you have your routines. Usually your daily, which we're going to talk about, weekly, monthly routines, little things that you do each day or periodically that are going to lead to you being able to accomplish those goals. And then at the very bottom, one of the really important pieces of this is your milestones. Like when you go through this class, how many of you feel like you have 5 or 6 things that you know you're supposed to do, and they're kind of sitting there like a weight on your shoulder, like, oh, I need to create my own website. I need to have my own buyer lead management system in place. I need to put together all my listing presentation information, and then it kind of weighs you down. And then guess what happens when you get weighed down? It weighs you down, but you don't do it. Isn't that the weirdest thing? We procrastinate it and we let it weigh us down, but we don't get around to doing it. So you offload that onto your goal sheet, and you say, okay, by June I'm going to have this done. By March I'm going to have this done. You actually put a deadline to when you want to get it done so you can offload it, and then you have routines that are going to help you get towards that. But then you can say, okay, I got this done by this date. And it's usually one of those things that you just need to get done, but you need to offload it so it doesn't keep weighing you down. Does that make sense? So after I read my goals and I get ready, then I do another little meditation. There's a couple of apps that I would highly recommend for this. We're talking 5 to 10 minutes. It's called mindfulness. One is called Headspace, and the other one's called Calm. Thank you. I was going to say clear. It's not clear. Calm. Thank you. I love Calm. Calm's my favorite, actually, the one I'm using now. But I've tried both of them. But it's like $50 a year, and they have like the Daily Joe. If you probably heard, if you've been with it, and you can listen to some things that will help you each day. But the meditation part of it is really important. When I say meditation, please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about if you've lived long enough, and from the 70s. I'm not talking about shrooms and hallucinogens or anything like that. No one laughs about that. Not old enough for that. But what I am talking about is that if you spend 5 minutes even, that's all it really takes, in a breathing exercise as well as a mindfulness exercise, which is basically just being very present in the moment and being aware of all your senses, kind of letting the mind chatter go out of your head, and because we have that all the time. How many of you have a lot of mind chatter? Like all day long for me, I've got things, myself talking to myself about what I'm doing good and bad or whatever. So this moment actually helps it's like an exercise for your frontal lobes. Remember, your frontal lobes have what in them? What's the power of your frontal lobes? Anybody remembers this? Creativity, empathy, innovation, all those things that you want that's going to help you succeed. And then in the back of your spine, what's all there? Fight or flight. It's all the worries and the anxieties. If you want to be able to control your anxiety and your worries, which is really where problems happen. Did you know that? Most relationship and business problems happen because of anxiety and worry. We overthink things. Most of the time we have this much information, but we believe we know this much. How many of you ever felt that way before? Or other people that, we always can point it out in other people, but yeah, I don't do that. And then we do it, right? And we create our own problems most of the time. We actually talk ourselves into craziness because of this mind chatter that have to do with fight or flight, instead of being in this exploration and creative mode that we should really be in the sympathetic mode. And guess what? The only way that doctors have found, and I'm not talking about just weird scientists or feel-good self-help stuff, which some of that stuff I think is nuts and crazy, honestly. But the stuff that really is effective is when you understand that your ability to be mindful for 5-10 minutes a day is actually a strengthening exercise for those frontal lobes, for those things that are going to help you be more creative, more innovative, more sympathetic, empathetic, more able to take on every day's challenge without thinking about all the problems that could possibly happen, but think about, hey, what's the best next step I can take? How can I make this work for my good? Instead of how things are going to screw up, stuff like that. Okay? So everybody hopefully have a morning routine. Then when I'm driving around, I like to listen to really good books. I love listening to good books. How many of you have an Audible account? Good. That should be one of those things that you just invest in because you're a real estate agent and you probably spend, 70% of your time in your car driving around. So why not listen to good books? I know music is fun too. Listen to music when you need to. It can kind of invigorate you. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with listening to music, but try to listen to some good books. One of the good books, I have many that are my core books. We'll talk about some of those when we go through the coaching program for those that are going to be part of that, because these are some things that I listen to on a regular basis. But one I would recommend if you're trying to figure out how to take the best next step forward in anything that you do and understand how mindfulness and things like that work, it's called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. You heard that book before?
Great book.
Yeah, it's a really good book. If you listen to it, he's got this stronger, he's from, the Middle East, India. He's got a bit of an Indian accent. So you have to get used to it. I actually like it. I've had other people say, I can't stand listening to that, but it's a very calming voice. But he's got, I think he went to MIT and Yale, and he's a really, really bright guy. This is not about just some, self-help stuff. This is real science behind the way that our minds work and how you can develop a strength of resiliency on how to take the next best step forward in whatever you're trying to accomplish. Okay?
Can you say the name of the...
It's called Positive Intelligence, and Shirzad Chamine. It's Chirzad Chamine. Shirzad Chamine is his name. Brilliant guy, really great to listen to get kind of an insight. What I like about the book is I'm very, I'm more of a, not that I'm in any way a scientist at all, but I like things to be explained to me logically compared to just feel-good stuff, right? I don't know why. And I'm not saying the feel-good stuff isn't bad, and it does feel good. Like, what's that one guy that wrote 50 books? I read some of his books. Dr. I forgot his name. Big guy. I forgot, back in the 80s and stuff. I just had it on the top of my mind. But anyway.
I was thinking of Dr. Phil, yeah.
Not Dr. Phil. Like a Dr. Phil.
Chicken soup guy.
I don't think it was a chicken. Anyway, it'll come to me if I think of it. I can picture him. But he had some good books and stuff like that. It's kind of more of the feel-good type of stuff and kind of psychology, even though he was a psychologist as well, behind, really, affirmations and stuff like that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those. I don't like to look at myself in the mirror and tell myself that I'm awesome. I just think it's weird. But for some people, they need that, right? But what I am saying is that understanding why our brains work the way that they do and how to actually exercise the frontal lobes, in a sense. So the way that Shirzad introduces it is he's talking about saboteurs and things like that, but what I really like is that it's scientific. So everyone knows what an IQ is, right? What does IQ stand for? Intelligent quotient. It's a quotient, right, that you can measure against. And then there's also an EQ. Anybody heard of an EQ? It's the emotional quotient. And there are people that are, I have a son that's 15 years old. His EQ is very high, just naturally. He knows when mom needs a hug. He knows how to interact with people in a way that makes them feel good, and he just does it naturally. Some of us need to work on it, like myself is one of those people. But you can actually work on these things. They found that those quotients aren't as much as they used to think back in the 50s and before that, like even the IQ is kind of set. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you are. You might have a range or something that you're kind of naturally born with. But there's a third quotient that I didn't know about until I read Shirzad's book called the positive quotient. And it's quite fascinating to think that, and it makes a lot of sense, especially as you read through his book or listen to it, is that there are people out there, and you can learn to do this as well, that are more positive than others. Have you ever noticed that? You can take any situation and look at that situation, and some people just kind of see it from a negative point of view, and others can see it, this same exact situation, in a positive way, right? Not necessarily a blissful positive, like I don't need to do anything, but how do I take, like I said before, that next best step forward? So anyway, good book. Okay, so now we've gotten through your morning routine. Why did I start with that? Because I really believe that if you want to get into what I'm going to teach you next, into these routines of building your business, that you really need to start the day so that you're really ready to go. I mean, how many of you have an office at home that you work in? Most of you work from home, right? Or whatever you call the office. if you do it in your pajamas with the cup of coffee or the Red Bull and you're not really into it that time and you're doing it because you feel whatever it is that you're doing, to prospect new business, you feel obligated to do, or you know that you have to do it, it's sometimes not as effective or efficient or as good. One of the best college courses that I took, an undergraduate class, was from a professor that taught us how to study. He said, if you spend, I had teachers that basically say, in my class, you're going to spend 3 to 4 hours a day studying for my class. Anybody remember that in college yet? Yeah. Just for this class. I'm like, I can't do that. I have 7 classes. They're not 28 hours in a day. That's not fair, I'm like, that's crazy. But I had a professor say, did you know that you could do all your studying for all your classes in probably about 2 hours a day, barring, studying for tests and things like that. And I was like, okay, I'm good for that. What do I have to do? And he said, pick the same place at the same time every single day and do your studying that way. And don't do it in the kitchen and don't do it in your bedroom. You know why he said don't do it in those 2 places? Because our minds and our bodies are wired for what do we want to do when we're in the kitchen? Eat. If your office is in the kitchen, how many feel like you're snacking all the time, right? If your office is in your bedroom, if you're in your room, guess what ends up happening? You get tired. It's interesting how that works. It's just a physiological, neurological kind of makeup of what our bodies want to do in those conditions, states. So have a place where you go, and for those 2 hours, that's what he was explaining in terms of studying, study in the same place every single day, and you'll be more efficient and effective and do it every single day at the same time, right? Same place, same time, right? So we incorporated that into what I'm recommending to you in this Captivate program. Find one place every single day that you go to, usually right after your morning routine, and make that your power hour, your 1 hour. We call it daily connections because I like it better as a way that we connect with people instead of selling people. How many of you like to sell people or pitch to people? Right? Guess what? They hate it worse than you do. They do. People don't like receiving those phone calls, those prospecting cold calls and things like that. So we call it daily connections. But you have to commit to doing it every single day, 5 days a week, and it's best to do it at the same place every day while you're dressed and ready to go. Like, get dressed for the day. Literally get dressed up because you're going to work. You don't go into an office, maybe it's your home office, don't be in your pajamas. Don't forget to do your morning routine. Get all ready for it. And then sit down and do your 1 hour. And then I'll teach you who to call and what you have to offer. So it's a service call, not a sales call. How many of you feel good about that? If I can serve people and give them something of value that they want and not just try to do it for 4% of the people out there, then maybe I have something to offer. Great, I can do that. But if I'm going to go out there and make a sales pitch call and I'm doing it about real estate because that's what I need, that's what I'm trying to do. If I'm going to make a call, I want new business, right? How many of you feel that way? I don't want to waste my time calling just for the sake of calling. I want to get new business out of it, and that's what I'll teach you how to do. You only have to spend 1 hour a day to do it. How many of you can do it for 1 hour? It's not hard to do for just 1 hour, but you have to be committed to doing it every day for an hour because it doesn't work if you do it every now and then for 1 hour, right? Or we also found it doesn't work as well if you do it for 4 hours one day because you need the business really bad and you don't have anything else to do, and then the next 5 days you don't want to call for those 5 days at all because you're so sick of it, right? We found that 1 hour is a very effective way to commit to a daily connection or prospecting effort. And if you do it every day, 5 days a week, and if you do it at the same time in the same place, you'll become very, very effective at it. Okay? How many of you feel like you can do that? It's not that hard to do until you try to do it. Then you try to do it, and you're like, oh, how many excuses can you come up with to not do it for that hour?
But it's just like 15 minutes of preparation before.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be nice if you had 1 hour and you know exactly who you call and what you have to offer, so the preparation is very minimal, right? So that's what we want to have happen. So that's what I'm going to show you. We've worked through this for years, and it's worked really well. But again, it has to happen same place, same time, 5 days a week. Now, how do you do that if you have other obligations during this time? When's the best time to do your power hour, do you think? The morning to get it over with. Right? Not just to get it over with in terms of like, I can't wait to get it done, but also you're going to be in the best, if you've had a good morning routine, you're going to be most energetic and most ready to make these kind of calls than any other time during the day. Plus, if you get it done with at first thing in the morning, right? And you don't hold that weight. How many of you do that? Hold that weight the rest of the day, like, I know I was supposed to call. I know I was supposed to spend that time. And you feel that all day long as you get busy doing the things that you're supposed to be doing or that you have to do your job. And then at the end of the day, it's 9 o'clock at night. I can't call anybody this late. And you feel guilty about it. And then you start your next day and things happen again. So again, you make it a routine and do it in the morning so that you can get it out of the way, and then you can do the rest of your day's work without that guilt. You actually can feel even better. Because when you do something great, you accomplish something good in the morning, guess what that does for you the rest of the day? It makes you feel more able to get other things done. That's why you even make that little effort of making the bed in the morning. It kind of starts that, that domino effect of good deeds that are happening. And you're going to continue to, those dominoes hopefully will continue to fall throughout the day in terms of the way that you want them to, right? Make sense? So what time during the day is usually the best we found? Somewhere between 9 and 11 we found is the best time to do it, right? So pick a time and you have to time block it, meaning nothing else gets in the way. Now, how do you do that if, let's say on Tuesdays, you have every 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, you have your broker sales meeting. Should you be at your broker sales meetings if you have them still after COVID? Many of them aren't doing that. But should you be at those? Yes, you should. There's reasons for that, right? If you have listings and you tell everybody in the broker that's there, all the other agents about your new listing, is that going to help you with your listing? Yeah, right? There's other good things for that. You'll learn things that you'll need to know about helping your business or whatever tools you're using, things like that. So, you may say that every Tuesday I'm going to, or maybe it's Wednesday because today's Wednesday, I'm going to go to my broker sales meeting and then I'm going to go to a CE training class. So on Wednesdays, I don't make my phone calls. I don't want to overburden myself because that's just too much. I'm stacking up, as a responsibility. Does that make sense? So then you could say Mondays and Tuesdays I make my call. Wednesdays I do my administrative things, my meetings and things like that. Then I call Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday. Why is Saturday a good day for a lot of agents to call? Because people might be more home or more available. So I put that in the mix. So I do recommend to agents make Saturday one of those days. It's only 1 hour, right? And then if you do other things that day with family and things like that, it still can be a very effective hour. Okay, does that make sense? But the time blocking piece of it is the most important. When I say time blocking, you've all heard that. It sounds kind of almost cliche. It's become such a kind of thrown around, couple of words. Is that you have to make it a sacred block of time that you don't let anything else get in the way. Put it on your calendar. Let everyone know. Let your significant other know. Let your kids know. Let everybody know. I am not going to be bothered during this time because this is when I am committed to doing this effort. Now, you can decide when that is. If noon works best for you because you got all this busyness in the morning, you got to take kids to school and you got to do all sorts of other things, or you got all those meetings, then make it at noon, but then you have to make sure it gets done at noon. You can't make any other appointments at noon. When someone calls you up and says, hey, I love this house, I want to go look at it at noon, guess what you tell them? I can at 1:30, or before then, or however you're going to work that out. It has to be something that you block out almost as a sacred, time of that nothing else gets in the way. You'll find that if you do that, the first 3 to 4 weeks of that is going to be super hard, right? Things are going to come up. Guess what happens if you do it every single, 5 days a week for 3 to 4 weeks in a row? It becomes a habit, and people get used to that time. With our loan officers, we do this, and they actually requested when we did it, they have this, it's called Cap 88, because that's what we call it, but they have this red and green sign they put on their door, and if it's on red, it means don't come in, don't bother me, don't talk to me, my door's shut, I'm doing my 1 hour power hour. And they have a 5-day-a-week power hour of who they call and what they have to offer. Because the next step in this is you never make a phone call to someone else if you don't have something to give them. Let me repeat that, how important that is. You never call someone because of something you want. You call something because you have something to offer them. Does that make sense? Because if you do it because it's something you want, they know that, and guess what they're going to stop doing? Or it's going to take them a while to get into the habit of wanting to do this. Answer the damn phone. They won't. You know why? When I have a lot of agents that start doing this, like no one's answering their phone. And then you know what I have to tell them? It's a really hard fact to say this. How many people have their phone with them all the time? Everybody. If they're not answering the phone, or they're not hitting that little button that everybody does that says, hey, can I call you right back? Guess what that means? They don't want to talk to you. And the reason people don't want to talk to you is why?
You don't have any answers. You're not ready.
Well, it may not be that as far as answers go. It may be because you want something from them and they're thinking, I don't want to have to be obligated to give them something. How many of you like sales calls when you get the sales calls? How many of you ignore them if it says that it's from someone coming that you know is trying to sell you something, right? You just ignore it. Now, if you want something, great. But how many people are ready to go right now, with that call at that moment, and they're excited about hearing from you that you have something that you want to give them. You think in your mind, I'm giving them something. I'm giving them my time. I'm giving them my expertise. But they're just thinking is what? You're just taking something. You want something from me. And I have to decide if I want to take the time to answer your phone call to tell you no thank you. So that's why they don't answer. So we need to flip it around to whenever I call someone, I'm calling them with a purpose. And that purpose has to be their purpose, not my purpose first. Remember we talked about the raving fan, mission statement? If I can't create raving fans if I keep asking people for stuff. How many of you like people that ask for things all the time? Anybody know anybody like that? Besides your kids? Along with your kids? How many of you enjoy getting asked for stuff all the time by people? Nobody does. Nobody likes that. But if someone has something to offer me, that makes me happy, right? So let's talk about what you can offer so that whenever you make those phone calls, you're not asking for something for you. You're offering something to them that doesn't confuse you. Because I have to be clear when I say that. Most of the time when a salesperson calls someone else, they have completely convinced themselves that they're doing that person a favor. And they are not. At all. Okay? You're not doing anybody a favor until you're giving them something that they want when they want it. And if you don't know what that is, then you've already lost. If you're just guessing, you've already lost, right? If you're just fishing, so to speak, you're annoying people. And how many people at any given time are locked and ready to buy property? About 4%. So what does that mean for the other 96% of people if you start calling people randomly? You've annoyed them. You've annoyed 96% of the people. Is that good odds? How many of you wants a 96% odds against you instead of for you? Nobody wants them. So now let's talk about who to call and what to offer during this effort. Now, to be clear, and I didn't quite clarify this, so I want to make sure it's true. You're not making phone calls just for them in terms of, hey, how's it going? I want to reach out, stuff like that. We'll talk about, the offering. But the purpose of your phone calls for you and for your business. If you're going to spend an hour a day of your business time, you still have to, it needs to be effective, right? Even though you're out there trying to help people, and it's really true help because it's about what they want, you still have to know that in your mind, if I'm making a phone call, what am I trying to accomplish with that phone call? An appointment. That's the whole goal. You should be making appointments. That's your phone call, is I'm making an appointment. You don't have to explain things. If you're spending 15 to 20 minutes talking to someone just to catch up with them because you haven't talked to them for a while, that's a fun, interesting call as a friend, but it does nothing for your business hardly, or very little for your business. And I do want to emphasize this too. I want you all to be friendly, right? You should be. You should all be honest and good and kind and friendly and all those type of things. But if your whole business is based on that, that's not a value statement. That's just basically being a good person. You should all be good people, right? So this idea that real estate is a relationship business, it's a friendship business, it should not be. People should not be choosing you because they like you. They should choose you, maybe not choose you if they don't like you, obviously, right? But they should choose you because you're really good at what you do to help them get what they want. And what they want isn't a friend necessarily. What they want, if they're going to pay $20,000, is what?
Someone who knows what they're doing.
Someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to getting the goals met. And if they're selling a house, they want the most money for their home and they want it to sell quickly. If they're buying a house, they want to make sure that they're getting all the information that they need to make a good financial decision, right? And so if you're just opening doors, you're basically just opening doors and you're being friendly about it. Don't kid yourself that people should be paying you for that. It's just crazy. Well, of course they should pay you a little bit, but certainly not what we're making for it. And that's why the problems happen with that, that lawsuit in Missouri, and it's going to get worse because people are like, why should I be paying 6% or even 5% for my home, and I'm the seller, and I have to even pay the buyer agents, on that side of it, because otherwise I can't sell a house. It's not fair. It's too much money. And that's what they feel is the case. So let's flip this around to like, we have something to offer. If you're a lawyer, right, obviously you should be a good person and you're nice. But what's most important when you hire a lawyer? They know what the hell they're doing, right? Same thing should go with real estate. Okay, same thing with CPA, same thing with any service provider. Okay, so your phone calls lead to appointments, and your appointments should lead to signed agreements if your business is going to grow. So this is your strategy between these daily connections. This power hour should be basically a result of multiple appointments that are going to lead to hopefully lots of signed agreements. Okay, but we have to put it in the context of what they want, not what we're trying to push onto them. And so that's what we're going to kind of go through in this effort of who do you call and what do you have to offer. This is where it's going to get a lot of fun. I hope you get excited about this, because this is the big conundrum, isn't it? How many of you feel like, I don't know how to call people and get them to say, please help me? I'm just trying my damnedest to get people to pay attention to me and remember me, so that when the sign goes up in my neighbor's yard, it's me on the sign and not some other person that neighbor knows, right? Or that person that I showed 4 homes to, and then I don't hear from for 3 weeks, and then I find out later when I try to call them, because I forgot to call them during those 3 weeks, that they just bought a house with some other agent, right? Those things should not be happening if we're being consistent in terms of what we have to offer and the value that we bring to the table, so that we don't lose business that way. Okay, so it comes down to those 3 things. So lowest hanging fruit. If I'm going to make phone calls and I only have 1 hour a day to make phone calls, I'm going to start with the people that are most likely the ones that need my help now, and that are going to move forward with hopefully the transaction, where I get paid. So there's nothing wrong with it to look at it that way. So the first group, so you think about it in terms of groups. I have 4 groups, and I have different systems where I go to get that information. My first group is we call it house shopping without you. If you have buyers, and those buyers want what? What does a home buyer want? A home, right? They don't need you to call them and say, how's it going? Or anything like that. They want a home. So I'm going to make sure that a week never goes by that I'm not showing my active buyers a home. I'm not waiting for them to call me up and say, I got your listing alert, I see this house, I want to go look at it. You're not going to wait for that. You're going to make sure that a week never goes by that you're not showing your active buyers a home. Does that make sense? Super easy to do this. How many buyers do you have? I bet if you all think about it, if you have them hopefully in one place, you probably have 20, 30, 40 plus people that have told you at some point they want to buy a property, and at this point aren't under contract or haven't already purchased a property. Or you don't know, right? You should. Let me show you what it looks like, because you should have a place that you go to see this. I'm going to open up the buyer lead management system. Every one of you should have a buyer lead management system. If you don't know what that is, it's your website. And it should be your own website.
Mike, if someone tells you they're waiting to buy, are they a buyer?
Yes. Now, okay, so there's a difference between an active buyer who's actively looking and someone who's considering that they're in the process of buying. And we'll talk about what that is, right? And you will have both of them in your buyer lead management system. But what you should be able to do is see this. How many of you on the back end of your website can see this? If you can't raise your hand, then you need to figure this out. And we'll help you if you want to do that. This is like one of the most important things if you're going to support your buyers. You need to know who your buyers are with one glance, what homes they're looking at. This will even tell them or tell you the average price of the homes they're looking at. They might tell you, I'm trying to buy a $400,000 home, but they're looking at, $680,000 properties, right? So this will help you kind of get more insight to what they're doing, not just what they're saying. How many of you can do that? You also create your listing alerts through this, or your hot sheets, however you call it. How many of you can send a listing alert or a hot sheet via text, not just email? How many of you can do that? If your all hands don't go up, guess what you need to do? It needs to be done through text, even more so than email. How many of you will look at a text like that, and it takes you days if you ever see those emails that come through? You know what I mean? Same thing with our clients. So if you're not sending a listing alert through text, you've already lost out on a whole bunch of business. If you don't have the home buyer app and people are driving around neighborhoods and they're not clicking on, I want to see this home, and it goes directly to you, you are losing business. Okay, you have to have this technology set up. That's why in the coaching group, that's the first thing we do is we help you set up all the tech. This is one of the key technologies that you need. Okay, so when I get up in the morning, I'm doing my power hour, instead of thinking, okay, who should I call? Who have I talked to? It's all right here. And then you can filter it by, look at this person's viewed 8 homes. This person's viewed 191 properties. Do you think that person's actively looking for a home? Right? Maybe they're an investor and they keep looking and things like that. Do you know who your top active people are? Guess who the lowest hanging fruit is? Those people. Right now, you may have others that haven't looked at any homes. You put them in here, but they're in your pathway to qualification, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But they're in this kind of mode of moving up towards getting actively shopping. So there's one group, in a sense, or a division of this group, where I want to buy a house, I'm getting ready to do it. There's this other group that's like, I'm kind of looking, right? Now I'm more active. It's a progression. I'm a little bit more active, but I'm not ready to pull a trigger just yet. We're doing some other things financially, got to sell a house, whatever that may be. Then you got the other group that's like, as soon as I find the right house, I'm ready, right? Now, when I say other group, it's really just a progression. They all are there. They're just kind of progressing through that. Do you know where they are in that path? Okay? So if you have a buyer lead management system set up like this, what can you do? You can filter it and say, okay, here's my 15 people that are at that very last stage of this path, right? And I'm never going to let a week go by that they're not looking at a home. Now, I've got other things I'm offering and helping those other people along the way too. So look at all those people. I mean, this one agent, do you think she has any problem making an hour-a-day phone calls and bringing back? No, not at all. And by the way, that's just the one page. Look at how much it goes to. How long do these people stay here in the buyer lead management system?
Until they buy.
Until they buy. Or until they tell you, I already bought with someone else. Or they tell you, you're a jerk and I don't like you and get away. All right, if they do that. Hopefully they don't do that. Those are the only time you take them out of here. Now, this is not your, like I know in any technology and any business, we say CRM. Like there's this one all-inclusive system that holds all your people and does all the things it's supposed to do. There is no such thing in almost any industry. Even if there's an industry that spends a lot of money on a Salesforce system or something like that, they have all these people manage it because it's segmented so much. Because there's no one system that's going to give you end-to-end customer relationship management. And by the way, who's in charge of CRM or customer relationship management? You are. Not a system. So we have 7 technologies that work together towards all the different life cycles, the 6 stages of the homeowner life cycle, that provide the right information at the right time to the right people, both to me and to them. And so this is one just for your buyers. This is one piece of technology just for the buyers. So you get up in the morning after your after your morning routine, you start your power hour, boom, here's all the people that are actively shopping for a home. And what do you say to yourself? I'm never going to let a week go by that I don't show them a home. So when you make a phone call, what's the first thing that comes out of your mouth if you're thinking about what they want, not what you want? What's the first thing that should come out of your mouth?
Hey, you want to go look at a house?
What was that?
Hey, you want to go look at a house?
Yes,
I found a house.
I found a house. Now, you can't say that if you didn't find a house. So guess what you need to do? Find a house. Okay? It's so simple as that. So you may even spend 10 to 15 minutes finding the right property and getting the insider information. Because what's your SOP? Remember, everything has a standard operating procedure because you now have a new business model. How many of you feel like you have a business model to work from now? Which maybe before you didn't. What's my SOP for a new property? I print out what? The MLS sheet. And then I take a highlighter and I do what? I highlight all the things that they didn't see that's important about understanding if this house is worth purchasing. Because all they did is look at pictures, look at the price, look at a few things like that, and they're trying to make a determination to spend several $100,000 in a 30-year commitment. That's a lot of commitment for just aesthetically looking at some property in some area. So what your job is to give them all the little details, all the deets that are so important. This HOA is going to cover these things and has all these extra things for it. The house is over 17 years old. Has the AC and furnace been replaced? Have any of the appliances been replaced? Has the roof been replaced? Okay, we need to factor that in. Do you know how to run cap rates? Do you understand the depth of what you have to offer as a real estate agent and consultant compared to just someone that goes and opens doors for people for the houses that they found that they didn't really find because you sent them a hot sheet. You see where all that goes? Your role now is to bring more information. So you call them up and you say, hey, John, I found a house that I think you're going to love. And I got some really good insider information. And it's at 123 Johnson Street. And he's thinking, I looked at that place 5 times, and I saw that he did, but he never called me about it. But I didn't say that to him. All I said was, I found this house, I think you're going to like it. In his mind, he's thinking, well, I already saw it, or at least online, right? And then you say, but I have some really good insider information about this property. He's like, oh, like what? And he's learned what that means because you showed, remember the first showing? You give them insider information, right? And so now they're like, okay, what did you find out? I found out this, this, and this about the home. And all of a sudden, that house now makes more sense than it did when they just looked at pictures. Does that make sense to you? Okay? You now have done more for them to help them understand the value of what you have to offer and what the home has to offer, basically everything that they want. Okay? So like, okay, that sounds good. And then you say, oh, and I got 2 more homes I want you to look at. One is a distinctive home so that you can make a really good comparison of what you have available to you. We found that if you do this and you never let a week go by with your active buyers of looking at properties, guess what happens? They buy homes faster and with more confidence than when you just wait for them to see a house that they found. Right? Even if you're sending those listing alerts. Isn't that what you want? For them to make faster buyer decisions? You now have an SOP in place, you're now following it, and when you make your morning phone calls, I'm not wondering who do I call, what do I have to offer? I have all these people right here that want a house. And so what's my job if I'm good at it? I find them a house. And when I find them a house, I don't just say, hey, I think you're going to like this because of the nice pretty pictures, right? You need to know about this house because it's been on the market for this long. It has these things here, here, and here that may need to be looked at. We can structure an offer that maybe you can get a really good deal on the house. When people look at a house, they're like, yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. But then you go back with them and say, this house has been on the market for 129 days, and they haven't replaced in the 17 years the furnace or the AC unit, and they've reduced the price a couple of times. What if we after we look at it, and they're like, yeah, I could live in this house, but I want to do some things to it. What if you could buy this house for $50,000 less than they're asking, and maybe get them to pay for a 3-2-1 buy down on it as well? But I have enough information to give me reason to believe that they might accept that. And I actually talked to the agent and talked about it. And they actually gave me some indication that that may be the case, right? Does that make sense, what you're doing now? You are now an advocate, a consultant, an expert at not just getting people indoors and writing contracts. It's at understanding what you can do and what you should do in order to understand the whole package of this property offering, right? That's what you do for 1 hour. How many of you could do that? Easy. It's not hard to do. Now, when I say 1 hour, I don't care if you talk to 2 people or 20 people, right? And if you're talking to 20, it's because most of them aren't answering the phone and you leave the messages. But you should be, at least for the first group that you're going to be calling, doing some due diligence. If you only talk to 2 people, but those 2 people now have appointments to go look at homes, or you've done some really good due diligence on these properties and they don't want to look at them, once you find out if someone doesn't want to look at a house, you now have something to put on social media because you have more knowledge about that property. Ask the listing agent permission. Hey, do you mind? My buyer doesn't want to put an offer on this house, but you have an awesome house. And there's a lot of opportunity here, and I want to throw it out there on social media to let other people know about the opportunity beyond just seeing the pictures, which they should be doing better too at doing that. But you have a reach that they don't have with your social media following. And all of a sudden, you're selling other people's homes. Did you know that? That's another way of using this information. I've got insider information about these other homes, and you start teaching people about that. They're calling you up, hey, I want to know more about that house. I went and looked at it. I talked to the agent. It's a great home, and you have all these other opportunities, and then you have another buyer. Does that make sense? So much opportunity when you do this kind of effort, instead of just waiting for people to give you a call. Okay? Any questions about the first group? Make sense to everybody? Yeah? You all right? It's all good? Okay. Does it give you some excitement about a phone call instead of fret, and anxiety? Okay, so the next group is the waiting to buy or sell. So I'm going to teach you how, as a consultant, to get everybody you know. I'm like talking about the person sitting next to the plane when you go on vacation, to your best friend and your neighbor. all of them wanting to talk to you about the next step in real estate because they all have that. That's what we found out when we did this research, is that everybody over the age of 25, and sometimes even younger than that in this great country, just about everybody, not every single one, because there's some wackos out there. No, I'm just kidding. There's some people out there that think renting is a good thing to do for the rest of their lives. But for most people, what do they think about home ownership? It's good, and I want to be a part of that, right? But what they're thinking is, I can't do it right now. Or I have to do this or this to get ready. And they don't have a plan. Have you noticed that? Most people have no plan and very little clue about what it means to buy their next property. Even people that have bought properties before. They get hung up on certain things that they think is what it means to buy property. And you're a much better expert at that. Not that you're trying to push on them that they need to buy or sell property, but you understand more of what everything means when they look at one little piece of it. We simplify things when we're not experts at it, or we don't do it all the time. That's why everybody gets hung up with interest rate. Like, interest rate is the end all for buying property or not. Is interest rate the end all for everything? No, not even close. As a matter of fact, if you think that it is, then you're missing out on opportunities when interest rates are really low. What did everybody do when interest rates were really low? They bought and they paid way too much for homes. There's a competition. Oh, I get caught up in the competition. Oh yeah, I'll pay you $100,000 extra more than the house is getting even appraised for. Nuts. All these crazy things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to get people talking to you about getting ready to buy and sell property. Once you get them in that idea of, okay, I want to get ready for it, they go into this group, the waiting to buy or sell group. And you guys have this, I know you have this happen to you all the time, where there are people out there that tell you, yeah, we want to sell our house. This is one example. Want to sell our house and then buy a smaller house because our kid's going to graduate next year. It's our last one at home. We got a 5-bedroom house. We don't need something so big, right? How many of you had someone tell you something like that? Or like right now, how many of you have like a handful of people who've told you that when the interest rates drop, they want to go shopping for homes, things like that, right? So you have all these people that are kind of saying to you, I'm waiting for some reason to buy or sell. What's the reason they're waiting? There's 100 different reasons that people wait to buy or sell property. How many of you have a database that not only holds all that information, but reminds you when you need to reach back out to that person so that you can take that next step towards home ownership? Most agents do not. That's what your database is for, by the way. Did you know that? Databases are not meant to be email blasts, mechanisms. As a matter of fact, if you use it for that, you'll find that most people will unsubscribe at some point, or they just ignore it. And when you want to send out something really cool, no one even looks at it because they've gotten so much junk along the way. What's the best use of a good database for real estate agents, or for anybody really? Notes and reminders. That's really what it's for. So every single time someone has told you that they're thinking about a next step in real estate, you put them in there, not just as a note of what that means, but a reminder of when you're supposed to reach back out to them to help them get through that effort of buying or selling property. So the next technology you need, well, I'm not going to pull it up because I'm not enough time, but you can imagine this, and if you're part of our coaching group, we'll show you how to put this together. But you should be able to pull up your dashboard, and it should have one button that shows you all of your task reminders. Kind of like a calendar, but it's different than your daily calendar of, I'm supposed to be meeting this person at this showing or whatever that is. This is about your reminders of the next step that you're doing to help someone get towards buying or selling property because of conversations that you've had with them. Does that make sense? So the next group that you're going to come to before you start calling everybody else to try to put them in one of these two groups is to figure out, I told John I was going to call him in the spring when right before his daughter graduates or whatever, something like that. Or hopefully you all have this. If you've got buyers that have said, I'm a buyer but not at 8%, I'm a buyer at 6%. Do you know what the number is for them? And it shouldn't be just an interest rate number. What should the number really be about? When it's interest rate, what's that number really mean to them? Monthly payment, right? What's your monthly payment threshold? What are you looking for in terms of your monthly payment? Well, I would love to be around $3,000 a month. And right now, if I buy this house, it's $4,500 a month or something like that. I don't want to pay that much money for it, right? No matter how much you try to convince them that it might be a good time to acquire that property at a lower rate and then refinance it later and use a temporary rate buy down to be at the rate they want to right now. They just don't get convinced. So you have a number. Do you know that number, where that number is, so that you can find all those people as soon as interest rates go down to 6%? Everyone know that rates are going down right now. Does everyone know that? Why are rates going down right now? Anyone know the mechanisms behind it? It's hard to tell because there's no crystal ball and there's so many factors involved, but we've had some really good things happen recently. We had job numbers come in a couple of weeks ago, much lower than expected, which means what the Fed is doing is working for them, and it also means they're not great at economists, they're more lawyers, but they didn't factor in what it means to have, what the job situation is really about. So they were off by how many jobs? Anybody remember? Like 2 million jobs. Just nuts. Like, how the heck did you? So anyway, that comes in. Then the CPI came out Friday, right? No, yesterday. Consumer Price Index. What does Consumer Price Index measure? Inflation. Come on, folks. You should know this stuff because it's affecting our business. We have a core inflation number, and then we have the overall inflation number. The overall inflation number came down better than expected. Guess where it's at right now? Anyone know what it's at right now? You should know what it's at right now. 3.4%. Does that jive with what's going on right now? What does that mean, 3.4? What's the magic number that the Fed wants to see? 2.9. How close is 2.9 to 3.4? It's really close. What was it last June? It was almost 10%. It was awful. And that's where the Fed, at least on the short-term rate, which is different than long-term rate, but on the short-term rate, they're trying to bring it back down to a reasonable, inflationary rate, right? And it's getting really close to that. And then the last big hurdle that we had, at least recently, we have hurdles all the time, and we've had other issues, foreign, wars and things like that are a big factor in the money that's being spent by the government. But one of the big ones is we didn't want the government to shut down. Anybody hear about that? And we have a new Speaker of the House on the GOP, right? With the GOP. So Johnson, is he going to be, a hardliner? Is he going to be reasonable? And guess what he did? Which is actually, I was surprised, happily surprised. What did he do?
Can you reach out to the Democrats?
Well, he did work with the Democrats, which nowadays work with the other side of the aisle is like no one does it anymore, right? But they came up with a plan for what? To fund the government. So the government, right? And what happened the last time it didn't happen where we didn't fund the government, right? But it got close. What happened to our rating, our credit rating? Anyone know? We dropped a notch. We went to an AA plus instead of a AAA rating. Guess what that does to the bond yield? Okay, anyway, I'm getting way too much into this. But basically what I'm trying to say, and you should learn about some of these things because these all impact what? At some point, interest rate, mortgage interest rates. And does mortgage interest rates have anything to do with what you guys do? Just a little bit? Yeah. So understanding, guess what's going to happen, I think, pretty soon. I mean, I'm more optimistic than some, but I'm thinking that we might see interest rates down in the 6s, even in the next few months, if things keep going all right. What happens when interest rates get down to the 6s? You're going to see demand. How many of you know all those people that you're working with, where they're at when that happens and where they want to be? Most agents are like literally as clueless as sometimes our clients in terms of what they want to do and when they want to do it, and you shouldn't be. You should be meeting with them and talking to them about their next step and when it makes sense to them. And if you have a number in mind, like when it comes down to 6 3/4, do you know how many people are going to be like, hey, you know what, I'm back in? Are you going to be ready for that? Are you ready for it? No? Okay. Sorry, I spent way too much time. Scott's looking at me like, hey, we got lunch in here. We got a good graduation. Okay, so a couple more things I want to show you before we end. And that's about how to talk to anybody and everybody and get them up here. The rest of it, you're going to have to go through the book. Or please, we got 4 spots. Join us for the coaching program. We really would love to have you there because I want to fill those spots, but also because that's when I see the difference between people that have good ideas and good intentions, like or people or agents, and those that actually know how to enact on them. You'll make so much more money than we charge you for. So be a part of it, right? If you want to do that. So how do you get into this right here? You just go there, after you've exhausted this list, Monday through Friday or whatever days you're doing your call. your power hour. Then you go in there like, oh, who am I supposed to be talking to? Usually my list is so long, I could spend a whole week just going through that list, and then it keeps adding to it because I keep really good notes and reminders of when I should be talking to people about their next step. But I really want to get to the point where I'm helping a lot of people with their next step. So this is what I'm going to show you next, and then that's all I have time for. There's so much more. There's 7 appointments you can make. It's in the book. I won't have time to cover that, but I want to talk to you about how to talk to anybody and everybody about real estate and having them look to you as their consultant to get them through that next step, okay? You and usually the lender, with both of these, the lender for sure, because they crunch the numbers. It's a financial decision as well as a decision about buying and selling the property itself. So, when you think about everybody that you know, everyone, and that's what we call the sphere of influence. I don't care who they are, friend, neighbor, past client, relative, whatever it is. How many of you feel skeptical or at least apprehensive to call these people up and say, hey, remember I'm an agent and I love you and I want, stuff like that? Totally, we're going to change that. Basically, you can divide them all up into 2 groups of people. Guess what 2 groups those are? Super easy if you think about it. It's fun when you simplify things because simplification makes sense to you and to them. You don't have to overcomplicate things. It's super simple. There are only 2 groups of people out there that are at the age of buying property. Who are those 2 people? Renters and owners. That's it. Renters and owners. Okay? So, if they're a renter and you're calling up a renter, what do you have to offer? Remember, you always give something, not take it, right? I'm giving something. So what do I have to give to a renter? And then a homeowner, what do I have to give? And that's the 2 things I'm going to teach you. And by the way, by teaching you this, you now have the ability, the power, to call anybody and everybody, talk to anybody sitting next to you on a bus or a train or a plane or whatever, or you're out to eat. You can talk to anybody about this, and it makes sense, and it's exciting. Okay? So on the renter side of it, don't most renters want to be able to buy at some point? Sometime in their life? Almost everyone you meet. So what do we usually do when we talk to a renter? Hey, it's so much better to buy than it is to rent. Don't you know that renting is 100% interest? How many of you heard that before? And we say all these really weird, silly things that people don't even know what that means. And then in their mind, what are they thinking? What are they thinking about buying a house? I can't afford it. I don't have the down payment. They don't know what it is. What do most first-time buyers not have? A plan is what they don't have. Okay? So now imagine this. You can talk to anybody this way. And remember, everything you have has a name to it, and it has a specific offering that helps them. So this is what we call, when we call people that are renters. We say, hey, we got this new program that I'm so excited to share with you that helps people buy their first place. It's called the Pathway to Qualification. And what it does is it sets people up, gives them a plan to buy their next place by the time their lease is up. And then I ask the question, when is your lease up? Right? And what do they say? 6 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. And whatever I say is, wouldn't it be nice, instead of signing a new lease agreement, that you could actually sign a purchase agreement? And then they pause for a little bit, because that's a cool thing. Isn't that a great way to introduce it? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to, when your lease is up, there's no pressure there. Did I call them up and say, hey, when you're ready to buy, let me know? Or, when you're ready to make that, down payment or whatever. All those things don't have to be said. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to sign a purchase agreement instead of a lease agreement when your lease is up? Yeah, but, and then they say but. And what do they say but to? I don't have enough down payment, or I don't know if I make enough, or I don't know this, or I don't know that. And then here's the drop the mic response to that. Guess what it is? Simple. That's why we created this program. Simple as that. That's why we created the program. Right? We created a program to tell you exactly where you are right now in terms of how you could buy a property and where you need to be. And then we have this plan in place so that you can move towards that. So by the time your lease is up, you can buy, if it makes sense to you. If not, it can take whatever time you need it to. But isn't that a cool program? How many of you think that sounds pretty cool? It's the easiest thing ever, but it's also real. It's not something made up, it's a real thing. It's called the Pathway to Qualification. You gave it a name. It has a worksheet that comes with it. It has reports that come with it. You sit down and talk to your lender and you have an appointment that goes with it. In the book, it's called a PPA. The PPA approach to consulting. You have a program that includes a plan that has a set of action items that lead to what they want. And you can offer that now. There's 7 of them, not just 2. No, normally most agents have 2 things they can offer. What are the 2 things they offer? I can show you a house, or I can put your house up for sale, do a listing presentation. Now, you've got a program called the Pathway to Qualification, or a buyer prep program in that sense, okay? And the plan is a Pathway to Qualification. How many of you feel like you could do this? We actually had a group out in Denver about this size, about 35 agents, and we did this in 2 classes, like I mentioned before, and we challenged them to call up any renter they know and say just that. The script is actually in your book, by the way. And they just called them up and they said that. Guess how many appointments those 35 agents made in a 5-day period of time? And not all of them did, only about a third of them actually did it. Guess how many appointments they made? 127 appointments. The one, because I offered a $100 gift card to the agent that got the most, guess who got the most? 17 appointments in a 5-day period. How many of you would like 17 appointments? Right? And it was easy to do. They're like, I cannot believe how easy it was to do that. I just called them up. I didn't say, are you ready to buy or sell? Do you know someone ready to buy or sell? Hey, can I have the names of your friends that want to buy or sell so I can call them and bug them the same way I'm bugging you? Because that's what a lot of coaching programs teach you to do. And that should not be what you do, because that's annoying to them and to you. But if I call up a renter and I say, we've got a program called the Pathway to Qualification. And in that program, we help people buy their first home by the time their lease is up. When's your lease up? See, it just rolls off my tongue because I've said it so many times. When's your lease up? Oh, it's up in 6 months. That's great. Would you like to be able to buy in 6 months? Well, yes, but. And they always say but, and then they have all these reasons. And I say, guess what? That's why we created this program. And they're like, oh. You're like, oh, okay. And then what do? Well, I have you come in, and you sit down with me and my number cruncher. And I always call them the number cruncher. I don't call them what?
My mortgage guy.
My mortgage guy and a loan officer, because what do they think if it's a loan officer or mortgage guy? Oh, I got to apply for a loan, right? Even though they kind of, in a sense, do, because we actually found that about 30 to 40% of the people that come in thinking that they can't buy a house, guess what? They can right now if they wanted to. The other 30 to 40% around there have a few things they need to do, but they didn't have a plan. They didn't know what they should be doing. Now they do. And then the other 20%, they're going to take a while. Right? And that's possible. They take a while. And sometimes we'll even filter them out so we don't waste too much time. Like, do you have a job that pays you, between you and the person that you're going to buy the house with, at least $60,000 a year? Right now, it's really tough to buy a property if you're not making at least $60,000 a year. You all know that, right? Okay? So then we'll rule out those. I don't want to call someone up, yeah, I make $15 an hour and I make about $35,000 a year. Yeah, first big step for you, this is part of the plan. You can still meet with them, but you don't have to bring them into a formal meeting. That you can do that, kind of get that in place, right? Now, there's a worksheet. It's called the Pathway to Qualification. I don't have time to pull it up, but it actually has a worksheet that you get, like Brady's back there, he's done plenty of these. And so they can sit down with him and they're like, okay, where's your credit? Where's your DTI? Where's your down payment needed? And most of them realize that they didn't have the right information. How many of you met first-time buyers that are completely misinformed about how much down payment they need? We met one person that had saved over $50,000 over a 6-year period of time with their significant other to buy their first property. If they would have bought 5 years ago when they started saving, where would they be in terms of their equity, in terms of basically their overall net worth? Over 100,000, maybe 150,000, somewhere around there with the way that things were happening 5 years ago, right? And on top of that, they could have saved that money and used it for some other investment or something like that. They don't really necessarily understand that getting an FHA and a 100% finance loan over a long period of time is actually in their interest in terms of net worth, in terms of every gain that you could get from that. And so guess what else Brady has, or the other, Angie and the other loan officers that are here, guess what else they have? They have what's called the buy versus rent report. They actually can sit down and say how much you're paying right now in rent, how much would be an equivalent purchase for that, and they can put the whole thing together. And they help overcome some of those misconceptions. One of the biggest ones is, I live in an apartment, but I'm going to save up for my dream home. How many people do you know that do that? Well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of, right? Honestly, if you think about it that way. Buy a condo that's equivalent to this, you're paying about the same per month. Rent out a couple of the rooms if you're single, and you might be paying less than you're paying just for that condo, and you're making a little bit of money. You started your own little business this way, and then in 2 years you can sell that place if you want, and then what do you do with that equity? You buy the next place, and then you buy the next place. Before long, in 5 years, you actually are buying your dream home, whereas in 5 years, if you're saving up for it, you're still dreaming about it. Right? They don't know that. So we have number crunching reports that can tell them cost of waiting, buy versus rent, realistic, where's the break-even point in terms of cash flow to the point where I can actually see an improvement on my equity, and I'm actually paying less than I would pay for rent, because guess what happens to rent over a period of time? It continues to go up. What happens to a 30-year fixed loan? It stays flat. They don't see all those type of things unless it's on paper and they see it right there in front of them. So that's the appointment that you have. If you work with an intercap lender, guess what? They've already set themselves up completely to do that with you. Hopefully, if you're not working with them, you should. But if you're not, your lender knows how to do that. Because if all your lender is doing is just a transaction just like you are, that's where we're falling short in terms of the value that we have to offer to get people ready to buy property, their first property. Okay, and then the last thing is, and then we'll be done, I promise, is what's the next group of people that you're going to talk to? Your homeowners. What do you have to offer to a homeowner?
I bet it's a plan.
There is a plan. There's actually 5 plans that come from a program, right? But what's the number one reason that people buy property? The number one reason, even more so than I want to have my own place and paint my own walls, my own color, and my kids to grow up in this home and all that kind of stuff. That's number 2. Equity. Who said equity? Investing it. That's the number one reason. Even the first-time buyers. Why would they buy the first place? Because of what it's going to gain them in equity over time. Why do people buy multiple properties throughout their life? Because of equity. What does equity do for them? Did you know that more people save through equity than they do through any other means in this country? 87% of America's wealth is where? In properties. Even if it's their own property, right? So that's the beauty of it. So guess what you should be talking to homeowners about? What's the number one thing you should be talking to homeowners about on a regular basis? Equity. Number one reason. How many of you can talk to people about equity and really know what and understand what equity means? If you don't, guess what you should be doing? Studying about equity. But let me show you this incredible tool that you're going to want to have that's going to give you the leg up on an equity discussion and how to start that conversation no matter where you are. It's called, and you've probably heard this before, but most of you, I promise you, don't. I hate to say it that way, probably don't know how to use it. It's called HomeBot. How many of you have heard of HomeBot? Right? How many of you have tried to use HomeBot? How many of you think it's stupid because it never gives the right number? Right? Let me show you how HomeBot needs to be used and how it becomes your reason for talking equity to anybody and everybody that owns a property out there. So how many people do you know out there?
I think we talked about this last week.
Did we? Did we go into the detail of it?
Yeah.
Let's go into more because this is what's really important about this piece of it, okay? So on HomeBot, we go to, put it here. Yeah, I guess we did. Didn't we start the discussion? For some reason I was thinking last week's class was the captivating buyers. Last week we did start this discussion. Hopefully the repetition isn't bad because this is the first time anybody said anything. Okay, well good. So I'm going to come in here on this account, and so is everybody all right for me going through this for the next 10 minutes as a repetition? And for those that weren't here, they're like, please. Right? Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm just trying to give you a reason to talk to anybody about real estate and want them to talk to you. Right? That's the whole purpose of this. So I'm under this digest, just this one loan officer, so we're using him. He's given me permission to do this. So you can see that what it's going to look like for you. So I'm going to first go under activity, just so you have a sense of what this is, how powerful this is. This is a 30-day performance. Why is it a 30-day performance? Because if you don't know what HomeBot is, it is a monthly home digest. We don't call it HomeBot, by the way. I wouldn't even call it that. because you're the expert, not this tool, right? We call it the Home Equity Digest, or the Home Equity Statement is what we call it, okay? It tells people what their house is worth and how much equity they have in their house, and they get it every single month. Brilliant, right? And then you can see right here that Matt sent out 1,076 of these digests, or statements, right? Home Equity Statement. He sent out 1,000 of them just last month. Every month, a new statement goes out. 78% open rate. How many of you have seen 78% on any open rate of anything that goes out there? I mean, literally. Honestly, we don't see that. We do what's called a loan status update, where we send people emails and text messages that tell them exactly where their loan is that they're trying to close in a month and they're so frantic about, and we don't get this good of an open rate. That's how much people care about what their house is worth and how much equity they have in it. Okay? So we send that out every single month to them. 38 or 37% of those people started looking at properties based on the equity that they have. Opportunities where they could actually use that equity for some reason. Remember I said only 4% of people are open, or like at any given time thinking about buying or selling property? 37% of people are considering it because of equity. Make sense? Okay, so why is this so significant? When you go into someone's digest, and you not only see all the times this person has opened this up, look at how many times they've opened up. You'll probably have, like, I think Matt has 30 pages every single month of people, of feedback of people that are looking at their digest and what they're looking at. And you can filter it by whoever's looking at it the most and the most amount of equity. Lowest hanging fruit again. Isn't that not cool? I mean, hopefully you get
when my past clients start shopping for a house without me.
Basically it does. It tells you everything you'd want to know. But even more so, you don't have to just wait till things come in. You can start being proactive about it. And you can look at their digest when you give them a call. Let me go through, since I've already gone through this before, let me tell you how you make the phone call. Okay? Because this is what I want you to do. You're going to call somebody up and you're going to say to them, if they're a homeowner, right? They're not renters. If they're renters, what are you offering them? Pathway to qualification. If they're an owner of a property, this is what you say to them. I'm so excited to share with you this new technology I invested in that lets all my friends, my family, and my clients, and I always start with friends and family when I say that, because I want everybody to know when I talk to them, I consider you like family, right? I give it to all my friends and family and my clients, a monthly statement of what their house is worth and how much equity they have in their house. And then I'll even say something like this: isn't it silly that we get 401k statements and bank statements, and basically we know what our net worth is and all other investments. And in the one investment, like my own even, where it's a lot of it's in my property, I don't get a statement for it. And they're like, yeah, that seems crazy. Now you're going to get a statement from me. And don't worry, this isn't some marketing tool or some advertising. This is literally a monthly statement about your property, specifically your own. What it's worth, how much equity you have in it. But before I send it to you, I want to make sure it's accurate so you get the best information. Now, obviously, I'll always be here to help you get the exact number when you're ready to do something about it. But for now, I want you to get that monthly statement. It's basically your net worth statement when it comes to your property. I don't even ask permission if they want it, because who wouldn't want that, right? So then I say, okay, so when did you buy your house? So in HomeBot, you actually have a place where you add a new client. You've probably seen this before. Let me go back and I'll show you, because this is the sequence that I do it in. I go in here where it says add client, and then I just say, okay, I've got your name and your email address. Just make sure this is the email address you wanted to add, and then I've got your phone number because I'm talking to you. And by the way, you can do it in Spanish. I'm looking over at the four of you and all the others that are Spanish speakers. You can do this entire digest in Spanish as well, okay? Even if it's English to one person and Spanish to another within a marriage or something like that. And then I go in here in the home details. I'm like, okay, I just want to make sure I got the right address, right? And then the zip code. Do you remember what you bought it for and when you bought it? If you don't know that, then you ask them. That's going to help get more accurate information. Do you remember what it was appraised for? You don't have to have it. You can make up dates here, but the more accurate you can give this information, the better it's going to be in terms of how it pulls this information and creates this digest. Do you remember, or do you know how much you owe on it? Right? You know, it's really cool when you do this with someone and they give you those numbers. Guess what they're telling you? I trust you. I believe what you're doing is helpful to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you this personal information. And sometimes they'll even say, well, if I don't tell you this, is it not going to be accurate? I'm like, well, it can still be accurate because it's public record. I always love having those public record discussions with them because 99% of people have no idea that their mortgage is actually public record that's out there. Did you all know that? It's public record out there. So then you can go through and you can put as much information, what it's asking you here. It even talks about, is it a fixed or arm loan? Is it conventional or FHA or VA or jumbo or, 30, because it can really, key in on that. Do you have a PMI? What's PMI? Property mortgage insurance, right? Do people like PMIs? They don't, but they like them if they give them a really good rate and term in the beginning when they get an FHA or something like that. It's great, but a lot of times they want to refinance that over time and get rid of that, payment if they can. But it's good to have this information. Hey, I can add your spouse because, and I tell them this, that you can't forward this to anybody else. It's still, even though all the information is being pulled from public record, we want to make sure that it's just unique to you. This is your statement about your property. So, for your wife, you can't just forward this to her so she can see it. But if you give me her email address and her phone number, I can then add her to this and she'll get her own statement as well. And then they're giving me that information too, right? But they're doing it not because I'm asking it so I can market to them. They're doing it because of why? They want the information. It's important to them, right? And you can say other things to them if they start to think like, well, I can just get it off his estimate. Well, yeah, you could, but it won't tell you what your equity is and you can't adjust it. And you can't work with it. And it can't give you insight to what that equity can do for you in terms of investments and other things like that. And that's what we do it for. Okay? So then the first thing I'll do is once you've created that for them, you can then pull it up. Let me go to the clients here. And you can see it just like they see it. And I think last week I did show you how you can adjust things, right? Did I show you that? You want to be a part of that. If you're gonna do an hour a day of calls, and you're calling people, I know you own a house, but we haven't gotten into an equity discussion yet. What are you trying to get them into? An appointment to talk about what?
Investment properties.
Well, it could be about equity. There are 5 things that you can do with equity. Do you know what those 5 things are? Everyone know? You should. Your lender can help with that too, but there are 5 really important things you can do with equity. And so when I pull up one of these digests or statements, called a statement, because sometimes people don't understand what a digest means. They think it's reading. So a statement is, it's a financial statement for my home. So I can preview that digest again. And then on the back end, you can adjust things so you can adjust what they can play with. But that's what makes it interactive. I can tune the value here. I think the house is worth, more or less. And why is it only going to show me within this range? Because I can specify as the agent what range they see. Okay? That's what's really good about you being involved with that effort. And then here, it tells them what their equity is. And I tell them, did you know you have $165,000 in equity? And like, whoa, I didn't think about it. Yeah, that's a lot. And then I love asking the golden question when I'm on the phone and I want to make the appointment. Guess what that golden question is? What are you planning on doing with that equity? I love that question because usually I get silence. And then, you know what the first thing that most of them say? Well, I don't want to sell my house. Like, well, yeah, me either. I'm still living in my house, but guess what? I use my equity to do what?
Buy another one.
I can buy other properties. I can move up. I can move down. I can do all sorts of things. And then you have to know what those 5 are. If you have a mover-upper, that's one person. We have a program for that. Did you know there's a program for mover-uppers? It sounds silly. Well, how do I have a program for that? We call it the home transition plan. Because they have to move from one property to the other property, and I'm going to help you to do it so that it fits within your financial goals and against your net worth goals, and you use equity to do it. Did you know that people can move up to their next home in a lot of cases and not pay any more per month but increase their net worth? And then just swap homes because of what? Unrealized gain in terms of what? Equity. If they want to move down, I love doing this. I did this with my own mom. So if you don't think I don't believe this, then believe me, I do. My own mom, she sold her house in California, moved here with her husband right before they quit their job. So they, instead of buying one property, guess what I had them do? Buy 3 properties. Mortgage all 3 of those properties, still have a ton of money in the bank from the house that they sold out in California. And then they rent out 2 properties. And then the mortgage, or the rent that pays the mortgages of all 3. So they're still living in their house rent-free, so it's because that's what they want to do. But what's happening to their net worth and everything as they retire? What does everybody else do in retirement? eat away at their money. And guess what else they end up doing? Pay 35% to taxes because they have no write-offs. Now they have 2 rental properties. Guess what they have? They have write-offs and tax benefits and all sorts of things. They're gaining money through retirement, and their net worth is gaining. And they're in a business, and they're like, how many people retire? They're like, okay, what am I going to do now? I'm just eating away at money and golfing and playing pickleball. Like, oh no, but I'm also a landlord. It becomes a really fun thing. I'm just giving you ideas of so many different ideas of what they can do. So many things that people can do, but they don't know. So we created programs for it because it doesn't sound so ambiguous to say, hey, you could do stuff with it. You want to do something with it? Okay, what? Well, I don't know, something. You have to have something in play, and that is a meeting with a program that has a plan, that has a set of action items, and all of a sudden, you've got someone going into retirement with a new opportunity of a job, an equity, growth in their nest egg, and all that kind of stuff. If someone wants to relocate, well, we would love to live closer to family or work, or further away, or whatever that may be. Okay, we have a program for that, the relocation program, right? And so we talk about what that means. Maybe they want to move out of state or something like that. Is that still something you can help arrange? One of the biggest concerns that our clients have is that they don't know how to move from one place to the next. So they make all these stupid decisions of, I'm going to sell a house, then I'm going to rent for 6 months or a year, and then I'm going to go buy a house, and everybody's going to be happy about that. Anybody happy about renting after they have owned, and then before they buy? No one wants to do that. But they don't have anybody in their corner to show them how to do it and do it right. How do I plan for that? Okay? And a lot of times you may not know how to do it, and that's fine because you get other people involved. Get your lender involved in helping plan that, right? Get other people that are smart, get title and escrow and stuff involved in understanding, what is the total net gain that I can get from this next purchase with all of their costs considered. Who gives you the best net sheet out there in the world? Anyone know? Raise your hand back there because she gives us our net sheet out there all the time. And we have a net sheet that's written for low, mid, and high when we help people understand what they're going to place their house for sale on. And then when they want to sell their house, we go in there and we say, here, let me show you what things you should be doing to get your house ready to sell. There are 4 things that every house needs. Remember, you have all these SOPs now? You can go in there with intelligence and an offering that it's set. And you say, okay, let's work on some curb appeal here, and then let's do this, and this to your property, and then get it ready for sale. It's going to sell faster. It's going to sell for more money. We'll transition it to this next property. All of a sudden, you are the master. What? You are basically the organizer for everything that's going to happen. Instead of just being the person waiting for someone to call you up because they want to get into a door, or the person that says, hey, I want to sell my house, and you put a sign in the yard and let the market take care of itself. Do you now see the value of what you have to offer? This is Captivate. I hope you enjoyed and felt like you gained from everything you've learned up to this point. So this is this next level. If you want to take the next level with us, this is the next book you get. We'll go through with you not only all the classes that you took, but these workshops. We'll help you set up all the technology and help you know exactly what you should be able to do with each one of the pieces of technology, not to get overwhelmed. How many of you get overwhelmed with technology? I do even, right? So we show you, here's the 4 things you need to do with your buyer lead management system. Here's the 3 things you need to do with HomeBot. Because there's things you need to do to get it set up and to get it going, right? Here's how to take advantage of the video that you can create to introduce yourself, an introduction email, little details. How many of you, we get these great ideas and we learn about great ideas and on the surface it sounds so great. And then when you start getting down into the details, you get lost and frustrated and irritated and you give up. Anybody ever felt like they've done that before? So the whole purpose of this program is to get you through those details so you don't give up. And if you don't give up, guess what happens? You change the way you do business. So then we'll help you set up your growth plan that I told you, 1-page growth plan. And then you'll have 12 weeks. Oh, by the way, here's the pathway to qualification worksheet that goes with it. And your lender can show you also all those really great things that go along with the buy versus rent report and the cost of waiting report and the debt consolidation report and all these other really great reports that are very specific to each person in the appointments that you make with them. And when you have an appointment with someone and they make a plan, guess what you have now? A client, and you can sign an agreement. Because clients come when you have what? A plan. Right? And when you have a plan, they can sign the dotted line and say, okay, I'm on board with this plan, let's do it. Does someone have to buy right now in order for that plan to happen? No. What happens when you have a group of people in your pipeline that are 3 months out to buy the first property or 4 months out? When that first group hits that closing table, what do you have behind them in that pipeline. All these people, that's how your business grows. Instead of going like this, just waiting for people to give you a call or for you to call them and try to see if they're ready right now. And then what we'll do is we'll give you, to make that happen, we'll help you with 12 weeks of tracking your appointments. That's really what this is all about. 1 hour a day, you make appointments. You make goals for how many appointments you're going to make. All of a sudden, you're making all these appointments. And then they come in for the appointment. You have a signed agreement. You just fill up your pipeline. The next thing you're going to want to do after you finish this program, I need to hire a TC. And we even have some recommendations if you need a TC, because you shouldn't be spending your time doing that kind of stuff. You should be growing your business. And then if you need a marketing coordinator, you can do that as well. Okay? So coming up and talk to me about this. If you want to afterwards, we'd love to have you join us. But if not, I'm sure we'll cross paths. We'll be out there helping people buy and sell homes. Hopefully one of your clients will buy one of our properties, and one of our clients will buy one of yours. And we'll make this great offering of real estate in the great state of Utah something that goes so far beyond the transaction that we are now admired as consultants and as advisors and as number crunchers and as net, worth, everything that you need to know about, from CCNRs to making sure the transaction happens smoothly and everybody gets what's due. So take advantage of all that you have here in this really, really wonderful real estate business. And thank you. And that's the end. That's it.